Ryan Reynolds, and this year our
Springfield's Talk 1041. Welcome to the show. Good Wednesday morning. My name is Nick Reed. The Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447 KSGF. If you'd like to text into the program, feel free to do so. If you download the KSGF app, that makes it very easy to do. You don't even have to remember the number at that point. There's just a button that you can hit, and that'll send your message, whatever it may be, straight here to the studio. And sometimes we read them on air. We always see them, sometimes respond to them as well. But there's, depending on subject matter, oftentimes high volume, and we're not able to necessarily respond or get to all of them. But don't feel bad. We do see them. Halfway through the week. Now, this time next week, we're going to be having our first lunch bunch with Godfather's Pizza on the Springfield location. Already have a winner set up, and you too can get registered by going to ksgf.com. And like our past lunch bunches, as they have changed from time to time, keeping it fresh and new. If you win, then you and up to 5 people of your choosing will join me and Sarah as we have lunch at Godfather's. Awesome place, awesome folks over there. And they've got the Springfield location has a buffet, and there's a salad bar as well at that location. So, of course, you don't have to wait until you win with us in order to enjoy some of the best pizza you're going to find in the 417. But if you want to go with us and have it covered, then just get registered at ksgf.com. It's pretty simple stuff. Some of the latest developments, we'll go over Tom Horman. Of course, he was up in Minneapolis. Apparently, the left-wing agitators not too happy that Tim Walz met with him as they made their way through the Capitol, protesting outside Tim Walz's office. So now the target is shifting. See, that gives you a bit of insight here. A bit of insight. They don't want this to stop. They claim that this is all about, making the streets safe and making sure that the innocent people of Minnesota can live peacefully. And so here you have Tom Homan meet with Tom Walz is like, oh yeah, things were the tone shifted a bit, and perhaps we're moving in the right direction to get things the way that we want them. And who's protesting against it? But the people on the left. Isn't that amazing? It's almost as if this isn't even really about immigration or illegal immigration or ICE agents. It's simply about an insurrection. It is about overthrowing capacities, certain avenues of our government, trying to break down the entire system so that they can be in charge and begin dictating to all of us how it is that we should be living. And you see this constantly. These protesters, when things begin to seemingly move in the direction they want, they don't then celebrate it. The people like Tim Walz that might make that possible. By complying, there's a couple of have-tos, and really the big one is rapists and murderers and child molesters that are in the country illegally. You have to stop protecting them, turn them over to us. It's pretty simple stuff. You'd think that the left would be accommodating, given their claim that they simply want to be protecting the innocent illegal aliens. Okay? Well, then what problem could you possibly have with the Walz administration and the Democrats who run Minneapolis turning over violent criminal offenders? Well, apparently they do. Because they decided to march themselves right up to the state capitol so that Tim Walz could hear their voices. None too happy they are. I want to talk about this Ilhan Omar thing also. Now, there has been, of course, a great deal of focus and scrutiny on her for a number of reasons, and she's under investigation because of the fact that when she got elected, her and her husband's net worth, they had like $200 in their bank account, and just a couple years later, $25 million. Nothing suspicious there whatsoever. Zero suspicious. And so there's an investigation. An investigation, by the way, that actually started under the Biden administration. This was not something that originated with Donald Trump. For whatever reasons, be they political or otherwise, it was the Biden administration that began the investigation into the potential corruption of Ilhan Omar and how it was that magically she and her husband were able to go from poor to uber rich in just a couple of years. See, that's something only you're supposed to do if Biden is your last name. She was at a town hall event yesterday, and some disheveled-looking white guy with a syringe begins yelling at her and then squirts an amber-colored substance from the syringe that, according to witnesses, had a horrible, awful smell. And Ilhan Omar bravely tried almost to chase him down to fight back. And I'm not going to let these blanking blanks win, she said. Now, I see things oftentimes that I think maybe other people don't. And there's some things about this whole scenario that aren't really consistent with normal human behavior. Now, it doesn't mean that this necessarily was a setup, though anytime you have a situation like this occur, there's always going to be accusations of that. And there are reports that on his Facebook page, he posted a picture of Trump hugging Erica Kirk, and so that means that he's a Trump supporter, and I have no idea. But still, there's just a few things about it that are very unusual, and I want to share that with you coming up. We'll do news right now.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 36. Tonight, cloudy with a low around 17. For your Thursday, we'll see a 20% chance of rain and snow in the afternoon, otherwise partly sunny with a high near 38. And for Friday, partly sunny with a high near 25.
There's a story in the New York Post about the tax refunds that people should expect to get and how it is on average there is expected. Now, this is on average, people to get about $1,000 more in terms of a rebate. And the reason for that is because a lot of the changes tax-wise in the big, beautiful bill were retroactive, and a lot of times adjustments are made to accommodate for tax cuts. So if there's a tax cut goes into place, which means you pay less taxes, then less is taken out of your paycheck. Well, those automatic adjustments did not occur, and so the additional taxes that the average person would be paying during that period of time will come back in the form of a rebate. And so that's why it is that this time, now that shouldn't occur next year, as long as the adjustments, I guess if they're automatic or, those adjustments do take place. But this is what they're expecting on average, about $1,000. And the reason I'm thinking about this is because, of course, a lot of people, and they're talking about when, as opposed to just a tax cut that goes into effect, where you suddenly have $50 more a month, that generally gets absorbed into your bills and your groceries. But when you get a lump sum like that, you start thinking about purchases, large purchases, and it's kind of an injection into the economy. And, vehicles, home improvements are big ones. And, I talked to you about Pinnaker Honda and a lot of the great deals they have. And I'm sure that that's something they are going to have in mind when it comes to people purchasing vehicles. And they're going to recognize that and have a number of, attractive deals that are available, be it leasing deals or be it purchase deals. And, you can, of course, utilize that money spread over time, or you can do as part of a down payment. I mean, that's stuff you can work out with them. But I would just recommend that it's something that you keep in the back of your mind, and maybe start looking for the vehicles now. You should have your W-2s. If you don't have it by now, you should have it very soon. And you start doing all that tax stuff. And it's fun maybe sometimes to blow it on going out and buying a TV. But, vehicles, transportation is something that you definitely need. And that's a long-term purchase. And so just something to keep top of mind when it is, what should we do with all that extra money that we've got? You may want to spend it wisely. And Pinnaker Honda is one of those places you can do it. South Campbell, just south of Walnut Lawn. Illinois Omar at a town hall meeting, accosted and sprayed with an unknown substance Tuesday by a man who rushed the stage with a syringe at a chaotic town hall event in Minnesota. Omar was at a podium criticizing Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, calling for abolishing ICE, when Anthony Kazmierzak shouted inaudible remarks, allegedly charged her from the row closest to her lectern and sprayed liquid in the direction of her chest. The syringe appeared to contain an amber-colored liquid, and according to witnesses, it had a really caustic odor to it. Anytime something like this happens, of course, you have understandably suspicions as to whether it was a setup. And that's earned. Jussie Smollett, of course, being one of the most high-profile examples of a person on the left faking victimhood. And it isn't always high-profile. Stories after stories after stories will pop up or appear. You'll see it'll go viral. Oh, a server at this restaurant had somebody write a derogatory anti-LGBT comment on the tip line, and all of a sudden a GoFundMe page has, $20,000 or $220,000 for him, or some person of color had the N-word scrawled across this or that, and it turns out that was, and so these things happen with such consistency. People are understandably suspicious of people that are on the left in particular, because they're the ones that generally, 99% of the time, when there is an instance whether it is claimed to have played out or you actually see it play out, in which the thing was staged in order to further the victimhood status and to demonize the other side. And of course, we know that the outrage is only allowed when the victim is on the left. I guarantee you that the outrage that we'll hear over this and how it is all because of Donald Trump and Trump supporters and the rhetoric, that outrage will from the left will far overshadow any sort of outrage they had at, a conservative citizen encouraging free speech on college campuses being assassinated. That's the sort of thing where they say, well, I don't know, you may have free speech, but there are consequences to it. But one of their own has a liquid sprayed on them that apparently was completely benign. That is going to be the complete outrage. Now, I don't know, and time will tell, whether this is, you got a few options here. You got, some Trump supporter or, Republican guy that is just so outraged at the clear corruption going on in Minneapolis. And, somebody, and it may not even, it could be a Trump guy. It could be just somebody that's anti-government and so sick and tired of seeing elected officials like Ilhan Omar get in there with $12 in their bank account and within years are worth multi-millions of dollars. And, here you're some schmuck that goes to work day after day and you can barely make ends meet while you watch these elites get elected to office and suddenly become millionaires off your tax dollars. And just had enough of it. Could be some left-wing lunatic. Why would a left-winger? Because left-wingers are lunatics. Why would a left-winger go after somebody like Ilhan Omar? Because they're nuts. This is just how they operate. Could be somebody from the right. Could be somebody from the left. Could be somebody that is just like the guy who attacked Nancy Pelosi's husband, just out of his mind, not political at all. I'm always interested, though, in the way people react to situations and if it is consistent, if it makes sense. Now, we're told Ilhan Omar, oftentimes by her own declarations, that she is constantly under death threats. We also know that it is pretty common for Democrats, if they have town hall meetings, the people are handpicked, particularly those that are going to be close and up front. This isn't a secret. It's not scandalous. They just generally will handpick an audience, particularly if it's a smaller setting. Now, if you're talking about some massive event, you don't really have the ability to do that. But if it's a smaller venue, then and there's very, very limited seating, and maybe there's going to be 50 people there, you kind of get the VIPs, you get the people that are the activists, you get people that are going to go out and spread your word. If we believe all of this on the surface, none of that occurred. Ilhan Omar, who claims that she fears for her life and receives death threats all the time, decided to not only hold an open town hall, but apparently just let anyone and everyone in, even a disheveled-looking guy who apparently was given a seat up in the row closest to her. Now, I'm not saying that's not possible, but does that make a lot of sense? If you really are someone who fears for your life and you genuinely feel that you have a target on your back, that you are going to say, okay, I'm going to do this meeting in an enclosed room, and it's going to be completely open to anyone, everyone. I don't want credentials checked. I don't want any IDs checked. I don't want anything. It doesn't matter who these people are. And no, seats up front. While we usually reserve those for, VIPs or local dignitaries or people that work on the campaign that are activists, just let anybody sit up here that wants to. That's possible. There's another aspect of this, however, that to me seems extremely unlikely in terms of authentic behavior, and I want to share that next. Quick break. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. All right, we're going to take 90 seconds and get a check on the weather here and then chat further about the Illinois attack that took place yesterday. And just some, what I would say, red flags. And a number of you are on to it. I'll get to some of your text messages. I do want to remind you before traffic, Ozarks elder law, that planning is so very important. Nursing homes, people, we don't see elderly people standing on street corners holding up signs about being homeless. We see them in nursing homes when they're not being cared for in our own homes, friends, family members, or assisted living. So I think there's this assumption, if you've not gotten to that point of, for yourself or for others, that, well, it just gets paid for somehow. I mean, we don't really need to worry about it. You do need to worry about it. Sometimes it doesn't. You don't see those stories. In Missouri, there are 5 different options. And they don't always involve, well, we paid off the family farm, and the reason that we are keeping it is just to sell it, to spend all that equity to take care of mom or grandma in the nursing home. It doesn't have to be that way either, but you have to plan ahead of time. Every day that clicks by is a day that one more of those options can drop off to where it goes from 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1 to none. To find out what options are available to you, Ozarks Elder Law can help protect the assets you have. But you got to do it sooner than later. 10 area locations, free consultation, ozarkselderlaw.com.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 36. Tonight, cloudy with a low around 17. For your Thursday, we'll see a 20% chance of rain and snow in the afternoon, otherwise partly sunny with a high near 38. And for Friday, partly sunny skies with a high near 25.
Ilhan Omar at a town hall event speaking yesterday at some point, and then a crazed individual stormed her podium and had a syringe that it didn't have a needle, but it's sort of the part that's not the needle, whatever that part's called, and it was filled with an amber-colored liquid that apparently just smelled awful, and he squirted her with it, and he was taken away, and she defiantly, she was going to chase him down, and then she stood up, and we're not going to let, rah, rah, rah. And it could be just exactly as it appears. I mean, maybe it's some Trump supporter, maybe it's some left-winger, maybe it's some guy that's just crazy. Maybe it's somebody that isn't Republican or Democrat, and he sees here he's just, working to get by, or maybe on disability, and he sees, some woman who came here to the United States from a hellhole of a country and gets elected and goes from having pocket change in her checking account to suddenly worth millions with absolutely no explanation whatsoever, and then still trashes all over this country every chance she gets, and thought, you know what, this is BS. But there are a lot of things about it that, to me, defy human behavior. Number one, just recapping before the traffic update, we're told that she has death threats. She's constantly under fear of being attacked, that her life is in danger. Yet she has a town hall meeting out in the open that doesn't vet people, which Democrats traditionally do anyhow for their town hall meetings. And this guy somehow, as disheveled looking as listen, I'm telling you, particularly if you're on the left and you have this Trump derangement syndrome and you see some disheveled looking guy with a beard and his frumpy coat, he sits down in the front, that's going to be noticed. The people running the event are going to be like, does anybody know who this guy is? Particularly given that it doesn't appear to be a very big venue. And the fact that you would have suddenly an unvetted event with somebody sort of suspicious looking being allowed to sit in the row closest to her, that just doesn't jive with reality. But there's a component to this that, to me, defies even greater logic. And it came to me, the first report I heard that noted that she refused to be checked out or treated or go to the hospital. No, she stayed to finish. Now, does that sound right? You're someone who already, let's say she genuinely believes she has Trump supporters after her that are going to kill her, assassinate her. She gets rushed by somebody that sprays a not a clear liquid, but an amber color liquid on her that people said they could, like her, they're like, it smelled awful, you could smell it. And you don't go get checked out? You don't go to see if there was something in there that could be potentially dangerous. Not all poisons immediately hit you and affect you in a way that is dangerous or deadly. There are certain toxins that could take hours or perhaps even days to start having an effect. Yet she's like, no, it's okay. Does that make sense? Is that normal human behavior? Particularly, once again, reiterating the fact that according to her, she believes people are out to kill her. You see all that, well, it hasn't happened so much of late, but this is how a lot of political opposition would be attacked or killed in Russia. They wouldn't even necessarily know when it was that they were poisoned. All of a sudden, one day they start to get sick and then they're critically ill. And it was because someone at some point had either sprayed them with or, put in a drink, so they ingested some sort of poison. It wasn't immediate. We know these things occur. Except Illinois somehow wasn't worried about any of that. Now, why would that be? That's the part of this that defies logic. That she, just is dismissing any sort of concerns, or dismissed any sort of concerns that this was something that she had to actually worry about. And given how the left loves to dramatize things, love to blow things out of proportion, to have the opportunity to be seen being carted away in an ambulance, to have statements made by the hospital about treating her and will update you, to pass all of that opportunity up. In addition to just making sure that you weren't just squirted with some sort of fluid that could have potentially devastating effects. Now, that's not proof of anything, but it just doesn't make any sense. It is completely, and it to me is similar to the Jussie Smollett scenario, in which he's like, oh yeah, I went to get a Subway sandwich or whatever sort of sandwich at 2:30 in the morning in Chicago, and then all of a sudden, randomly, there happened to be two Trump supporters, and they recognized me, and then and then I decided to leave the noose around my neck. And these are like, none of that stuff really makes sense. None of that is consistent with human behavior. And there are elements of this that, to me, are very similar. It doesn't fit in with normal human behavior. Now, some will argue Ellen Omar is not normal. I mean, anyone who will marry their own brother, you can't expect to be held to normal human behavior standards. But it still seems just a bit odd to me. And just as a side note, because we know how this is going to be played up, now this is a sign of how bad things have gotten under Trump America. Oh, you got squirted with a liquid that you weren't even concerned about being dangerous. Really? I mean, I'm not. It's not right. Shouldn't be doing it. Nobody wins in a situation like that. But is that really what you want to use as your victimhood flag? Because there are a lot of conservatives or Republicans or Jewish people in this country that'd be more than happy to go head-to-head with your victimhood status, given what they've gone through by people on the left. Or churchgoers, for example. Christian churchgoers. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. There's another portion of the video that I think will catch some attention. The video of Ilan Omar being sprayed by an amber-colored liquid that smelled awful, and talking about reasons why much of this is suspicious. But there's a part of the video I think that will grab attention, though. I don't know that the suspicion really adds up. If you watch the people that are, at least from one of the angles, there's an angle of somebody filming this, which would be sort of to her right. So you see people in chairs to her left. And while this is going on, none of them act as if anything's happening. Now, there's one lady who at some point starts to get out her phone, and she kind of has a look of not shock or horror, but confusion on her face. But the other people are acting as if they're watching some boring movie, which is really weird. I think that is going to lead some people, because of that very odd behavior, to also believe that is a sign of a setup. But I don't know. The reason that to me doesn't add up is because why would you tell other people particularly just average voters, even if they're your supporters, because then you worry about it getting out. If you're going to set something like this up, there's a chance that you won't even tell some of your own staff, like just you, maybe one other person, and then the individual that you have do it are the only ones that are in the loop on it. And so, I don't think that it makes sense that the reason the people in the audience seem as if they are completely unaffected by what is going on, which again is weird human behavior wise, it just doesn't seem to make much sense that it would be because they are somehow in the know that the whole thing was fake, if of course it was. But so what does explain it? I have no idea. Hey, who knows? Who knows? Yeah, here, and a number of you, obviously very sharp, perceptive, give you an example. One of the text messages coming in, speaking on Omar, wouldn't they pat all people down going into a face-to-face, somewhat of a meeting with a sitting U.S. congressperson? And why would someone that looks such a way be seated on the front row, just mere feet from the congressperson? And lastly, if a person sprayed a substance on a sitting U.S. congressperson, they would not allow them to continue to speak because they'd be rushed off to a hospital to make sure that the liquid that was sprayed towards said U.S. congressperson was not harmful. So setup seems likely, and her name is pretty hot in the news lately. And that is, again, the part about it that makes the least amount of sense, that whether she wanted to or not, a sitting member of Congress that has claimed she receives death threats, something like that happens, and they're like, well, okay, we don't need to check you out. That just does not make any sense. Zero sense. Someone asking, Ilhan Omar married her brother? By all accounts, yes. I'm not going to go all into it. There's plenty of information and research out there, and it's somewhat convoluted, but she was married and then sort of kind of got a religious divorce from her first husband to marry some other guy that, according to reports, people in the Somali community have long said this other guy everyone knew it was her brother. In fact, it was kind of a scandal in the Somali community. This was well before she had run for Congress. The fact that she would marry her own brother, and it was, in fact, done by a non-Muslim. It wasn't an imam. It was some Christian minister. And the reason for that, according to people in the know, is because the Somali community is tight and knew that this was her brother. And so she couldn't find an imam to do it. And so then this second husband of hers, they eventually, and it was never legally done, it was legally done, but not religiously, which is, of course, important to her as a Muslim. And then that went to the wayside, and then she got back with her first husband. And the reason for the marriage to her brother was to get him into the country. This is what the belief or the suggestion is, that it was a form of fraud, though I don't know. Sometimes brothers and sisters really like each other or just a little too much, so it could very well be the situation with old Ilhan Omar. And then it didn't work out, so she went back to her first husband. I don't know. If I were married to some chick and then she left me for her brother, legitimately, I don't know if I'd take her back. There are a lot of take-back situations, but that's one of them. Boy, I don't know. I think that might just be a step too far. Someone did ask on the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line, are we sure this even happened? Are we sure? The way you described it sounds like AI video with no reactions from the rest of the crowd. And I mean, I think that it did play out. I mean, the people are identifiable, and so I imagine that it did. And like I said, sometimes people, I mean, some of them look. I don't want to be stereotyping, but a little bit older, so they may not really have been necessarily like, "What's going on here?" Yeah, you know how it can be, and I don't know. On one hand, you think, well, when something really unexpected happens like that, you can be caught off guard and you're not really like, what is going on here? And so you don't have the natural reaction. But like I said, you got to understand the minds of people on the left. They're victims. They're always under attack. It's gaslighting. So the fact that what in their minds looks like a stereotypical Trump supporter lunging at the lack of reaction is just a bit weird. But I can't think of any explanation that would feed into it being fake because of that. It just, I don't know. Like I said, the part about it, to me, biggest red flag is that a sitting member of Congress has a unidentified liquid sprayed on her, and it smells really bad, and there's no medical attention. No desire by her to get medical attention, no staff that says, you need to go to the hospital. Sometimes, there can be poisons, there can be, substances that have delayed effects. None of that. That just screams something's not right. Now, New York Post following story, Representative Ilhan Omar investigated by DOJ, Congress over ballooning net worth. Trump confirmed Monday that the Department of Justice and Congress are both investigating Ilhan Omar's skyrocketing net worth after the Post revealed House Republicans would be taking a look at the Minnesota Democrat and her investor husband's financing. Now, by the way, the very beginnings of investigating her because of suspicious financial acquisitions, if you will, began during the Biden administration. So this isn't someone that is behaving in a manner that doesn't warrant an investigation. The president, who had previously called for Omar to be jailed or deported to her birth country of Somalia, revealed the federal and congressional inquiries after dispatching Border Czar Tom Homan to ease tensions in Minneapolis related to Saturday's fatal shooting of ICU nurse Alex Preddy by a federal immigration officer. Trump noted the land of 10,000 lakes was already being probed for welfare fraud, but Omar, who left Somalia with nothing, is now worth tens of millions of dollars, according to her congressional financial disclosure. Would also be put under investigation. She fired back in a statement on X, "Sorry, Trump, your support is collapsing and you are panicking." House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer previously told the Post that his panel was weighing a subpoena for Omar and her husband, Tim Minette, who has had several lucrative businesses. Minette's investment firm, Rose Lake Capital, had $42.44 in its bank account as of 2022. Yes, $42. This, per court filings, as part of a lawsuit filed in South Dakota against a related company. Omar's 2024 House financial disclosure, just 2 years later, showed that at that point, Rose Lake Capital was suddenly worth up to $25 million. The Democrat had not disclosed a personal ownership stake in the firm, though spouse's assets must be listed in congressional disclosures. So, in other words, she was keeping it hidden. Other filings about Minette's additional business ventures, including a winery and a pot farm that he has since abandoned, brought the couple's total net worth to between $6 and $30 million. Comer said of the surging asset value, somebody's going to find out. It's either going to be my committee or the ethics committee. A Rose Lake spokesperson has said Minette netted less than $20,000 in 2024 from his share in the various companies, whereas the House disclosure lists total assets of the firm Omar's family fled Somalia for refugee camps in Kenya during her home nation's civil war, which had been ongoing since 1991. And then, of course, we here, as a compassionate country, welcomed her with open arms, and this is the treatment we get. You know, it's remarkable the number of people, particularly Democrats, that get elected to office and just boom, almost overnight. Go from having virtually no assets to worth millions and millions and millions of dollars. And it's all perfectly, we're told, normal. Because that happens all the time, doesn't it? You would think that if Ilhan Omar and her husband had the ingenuity to go from financially worthless to multimillionaires virtually overnight, they would have been able to do that in the private sector separate from her getting elected to Congress. I'm sure it's nothing other than a coincidence that striking of oil didn't occur until after she was elected. And of course, this is what strikes a lot of people. It tends to be those that rail against the wealthy, that once they get elected, have the greatest acceleration rate towards wealth. I mean, you look at Mamdani. Decides voluntarily to move into Gracie Mansion. He's going to renovate, put bidets in it so he can live like the upper crust. I'm sure he will soon be worth multi-millions of dollars as well. We've got news coming up in 60 seconds. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 104.1, and welcome to hour number 2. My name is Nick Reed. Streaming live, KSGF.com. As the snow begins to melt away, you may find that you've got some drainage issues around your home, drainage issues around your business, and it may not be terribly profound. I think it's going to be a slow melt off. It's not going to hit 50. We're just going to, tinker around there. But point being is that whether it is rainfall, and we almost always see some extreme rainfalls occur during a year, or you get the snow that's melting off, and you get those puddling of water, particularly around the foundation of your home. That's not good. Water can be just as damaging to a home as fire can, and that is one of the many areas that Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor can save you money and add value to your home, and not just money, but tremendous amount of heartache, because those are problems that once they occur and start to get out of control, you can't really do patchwork on it. You're talking about massive amounts of investments necessary. And drainage, you can do it one of two ways. You can just have, it there for functional purposes, but you can also have it done in a manner that is, invisible to the naked eye, or very visually pleasing as well. And that's the sort of work that you get with Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoors. So whether it is lighting for just the overall visual improvement of your home and safety, or you're talking about creating an outdoor living space as we had done, or perhaps drainage for your home, Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, you can find them under Nick's endorsements at ksgf.com. 2 federal agents, according to the reports, discharged their weapons during the fatal shooting of Minneapolis ICU nurse Alex Preddy, according to a government report sent to Congress Tuesday that provides the most comprehensive official timeline yet, while raising new questions about initial characterization of the incident. The report from U.S. Customs and Border Protection Office of Professional Responsibility, based on body cam footage and CBP documentation, makes no mention of 37-year-old Preddy attempting to reach for his legally owned 9mm handgun. The omission directly contradicts earlier statement from Department of Homeland Security officials who described Preddy as approaching officers with a firearm on his person. Now, some of this is perhaps just the writing of it. But if you have a report that doesn't mention Preddy attempting to reach for his firearm or brandishing the firearm, that doesn't contradict a description that he approached officers with a firearm on his person. That's not a contradiction. According to the CBP document obtained by CBS News, the incident began around 9 a.m. Saturday when a CBP officer was confronted by 2 female civilians blowing whistles during Operation Metro Surge enforcement actions near the intersection of Nicollet Avenue and 26th Street in Minneapolis. When the officers ordered the women to move out of the roadway and they refused, he pushed them both away. One of the women ran to... And by the way, I have seen this... I love this characterization. Preddy was doing what a man is supposed to do. He was jumping in to save abused women. When you are interfering with law enforcement and you are physically removed, you're not an abuse victim. No one is. One of the women ran to Preddy, and when the officer attempted to move both Preddy and the woman out of the roadway, they refused to comply. The officer then deployed pepper spray towards both individuals. The report states CBP personnel attempted to take Preddy into custody. He fought CBP personnel's efforts, and a struggle ensued. During the struggle, a BPA yelled, "He's got a gun," multiple times. Approximately 5 seconds later, a Border Patrol agent discharged his GBP-issued Glock 19, and a CBP officer also discharged his CBP-issued Glock 47 at Preddy. After the shooting, a Border Patrol agent advised he had possession of Preddy's firearm and subsequently cleared and secured Preddy's firearm in his vehicle. Now, we've talked about this breaking down of things second by second, millisecond, and this is what the left wants. They want people to get lost into the weeds, arguing over this as if this somehow means we should completely give up all of our national security concerns when it comes to controlling our own border. If this were really about concerns that one or apparently two officers acted inappropriately, whether just out of protocol or outside the bounds of the law, then they would recognize the process is playing out. The investigate already. You have reports to Congress already. Not weeks, not months, days. And in our country, if somebody is suspected of doing something that was illegal, there is an investigation. And if the investigation warrants charges, there are charges. And then there is a trial. That is how our system works. The idea, so we can either recognize that's how the system works or do what the left wants and completely give in to their political demands because of what was potentially, and I don't think that there's evidence of this at this point, but even if it were some sort of crime that was committed by law enforcement, that does not mean that we throw all of our laws out the window. That does not mean that we get rid of entire divisions of our government. That's not how that works. We have a legal system. But somehow the left has manipulated people into believing, number one, that this was, quote, murder. But even then, a step beyond that, just for the sake of argument, let's say that it was, we have a process for that. For a political ideology that loves to look back on a period of our history and focus so much on it as part of our horrific history in which you just had mob mentality whenever there was some sort of conflict, particularly when it comes to, black people. Get them! Somebody's accused of something, and you don't wait for the system to do its job. No, you just go get that guy. They sure have readopted that philosophy. There have been numerous stories of people in the medical profession, some of which have lost their jobs, going on social media and talking about ways to do harm to law enforcement. One nurse I've got the story, we'll get to it later, kind of run off some of these. She was fired. There have been a number of these, and she had gone on social media talking about how, I think you could incapacitate law enforcement and, just wrong, bad stuff. Does that mean that we get rid of hospitals? Does that mean we get rid of all nurses? Nope. Eliminate all nursing programs because some nurses did something wrong. No, of course not. So the idea that we should defund ICE, eliminate ICE, defund Homeland Security, because even if this was cold-blooded murder, that is not how things work. That's lunacy. It's nonsense. Now, I don't know whether the fact that, I honestly, I don't know that it matters. You had two law enforcement officials instead of one discharging their weapons. On one hand, you look at that and you evaluate it and go, well, you could say it wasn't just one. If two people thought that it was warranted, that is suggesting that perhaps this is in their training. But what again happens is you start trying to evaluate and look at things from a logical perspective, and that's not what this is about for the left. They don't care whether this was warranted or not. They just wanted a killing. That's all they've been looking for. to coax one of their followers. This is what all the weekly trainings are about. This is what all the encrypted signal chats are about and coordinating and dispatching. They're just desperately looking for a killing. Whether or not it was warranted, not warranted, that's irrelevant to them. Which is part of the reason it's so frustrating when you see some of these pathetic Republicans become the useful idiots of the left, who have no interest in the truth on any of this. Incidentally, and many of you probably have already seen the reports, apparently Alex Preddy had last week or sometime a week prior a cracked rib because he was fighting law enforcement. This isn't some nurse that was just out for a stroll and, oh my gosh, some lady's in distress. He's a trained agent of these disruptors, of these violent rioters. Weather in a moment. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 36. Tonight, cloudy with a low around 17. For your Thursday, we'll see a 20% chance of rain and snow in the afternoon, otherwise partly sunny with a high near 38. And for Friday, partly sunny skies with a high near 25.
Border Czar Tom Homan revealed he met with Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Minnesota Mayor Jacob Frey, as well as other law enforcement officials, adding the meetings were a productive starting point, explaining in a post on X. They had discussed the issues on the ground in Minnesota, pointed out that President Trump has been clear that he wants American cities to be safe and secure for law-abiding residents. Quote, today I met with Governor Walz, Mayor Frey, top law enforcement officials to discuss the issues on the ground in Minnesota. We all agree we need to support our law enforcement officers, get criminals off the street. While we don't agree on everything, these meetings were a productive starting point, and I look forward to more conversations with key stakeholders days ahead. And then you've got Tim Walz on the meeting. He told CNN's Anderson Cooper there was a tone shift during the meeting with Border Czar saying, well, Tom's a professional. And then he goes on to insult Kristi Noem and Bovino. He said, I think the thing we said is we're clear about this. We need these folks out of Minnesota, and we need justice for Renee Good and for Alex and those where things that we came with, those were the things we came with. I think the thing that I'm most concerned about is the tone was different and tone shift, so forth. And so we're looking to move forward. Now, that, of course, resulted in left-wingers being quite upset because they don't want this to stop. This is all a weapon for them. Hence, protesters, left-wing protesters, yesterday making their way to Tim Walz's office. It's not a coincidence that they are beginning to turn on Tim Walz when he is talking about potentially bringing this thing to a conclusion. Would they not be celebrating? Should they not be instead showing up to Tim Walz's office with a giant thank you card to go outside to shake his hand and say, we want to meet with him because he has managed to craft the beginnings of the end of this thing? No, they're protesting him instead. Dozens of agitators packed the Minnesota Capitol yesterday, chants echoing through the halls, as tension over federal immigration enforcement boiled into a standoff just feet from Governor Tim Walz's office. The protests coming amid a broader wave of demonstrations following recent fatal encounters involving federal immigration agents, so forth, so forth. On Tuesday afternoon, around 200 agitators gathered outside Tim Walz's office in the Capitol shouting, "ICE out now and do your job." Well, that's why he was meeting with Tom Homan. And again, in order to highlight the true motivations here, they're not celebrating that. They're not thanking him for that. They're protesting him. The messaging from the left has been arguably more successful than messaging from the Trump administration on this. And listen, when you're willing to lie and you have the media on your side, that's very easy. And whenever your audience is one that is emotionally driven with knee-jerk reactions and don't really have an interest in an intellectual evaluation of things, that makes it very easy as well. It's like trying to win over a classroom of kindergartners, and your position is one of straightforward honesty, and then the opposition that's also trying to win over the kindergartners will lie to them and offer them all the candy they want. And, that's a pretty difficult battle. The reason, and I know many of you know this, but I'm reiterating it for a moment. The reason that ICE is in Minnesota, specifically Minneapolis, is because there are hundreds and hundreds of violent criminals who are in this country illegally that the Democrat-run municipalities refuse to detain, refuse to honor the ICE detainer request. So what happens is they find out, oh, you got whatever his name is who's here illegally from Guatemala, and you've arrested him for rape. Hold on to that guy for us, because there is a deportation order for him. Sanctuary cities and sanctuary states say, no, we're not going to do that. They release them back into the neighborhoods. So that means instead of what ICE is able to do in non-sanctuary cities, and that is just go get them at the jail, they have to go into the neighborhoods where the Democrats have released them. That's why this stuff is happening in these neighborhoods. That's just fact. It's easy to say, this is what I would do, this is what I would say. I think it would be a very difficult thing for the Democrats to fight against in terms of messaging. if Tom Homan put out a list of the the violent criminals that they are currently seeking in Minnesota. Just put out the list, however many hundreds are left, and the crimes that they have committed, and said, once Tim Walz hands these people over, we will leave. Just do that. Because what I suspect is that Democrats will not want to do it, because it will look as if they have given in. It will look as if they have surrendered to the Trump administration. And what will be on full display, or what would potentially be on full display in a scenario like that, is the average American person, not extreme left or extreme Trump supporter, but the average person that has kind of gotten caught up in thinking, yeah, I think we do need to deport the dangerous ones, but I don't like what's going on up there, because they don't understand the reason that ICE has to go out into the neighborhoods. They don't know the fact it's because Democrats have released those dangerous criminals into those neighborhoods, forcing ICE. They don't know all of that. But if they see the Trump administration say, okay, we'll go, whatever you want. We just want this list of rapists. We want this list of child molesters. We want this list of wife abusers. We want this list of murderers. These are the people we want. You hand them over, we're gone. What do they do then? It puts the ball in their court. And it makes it about what it actually is about ultimately, and that is violent criminals. And so then Democrats have a choice. They either comply, which to some of the independent-minded people who don't know what's really going on, they'll be like, well, yeah, that makes sense. That's what they want, right? I mean, they say that it's all about violent criminals, and Democrats say, oh, yes, we agree violent criminals should be deported, so this makes total sense. But the base will be angry. Because for them, this isn't anything about immigration. It's just about getting Trump. It's about pushing back against Trump, and they will see this as giving in. Or you cater to the left-wing mob and expose yourself to the people who believe that you're just trying to protect otherwise law-abiding people who happen to be in this country illegally, and they see what's really going on here. Like, wait a minute here. Why won't you turn over these rapists and murderers and child molesters? What is the deal here? Now, like I said, Tom Homan's a smart guy. And I, in no way, shape, or form, have some sort of grand, brilliant insight that he doesn't. But it just seems to me making it that straightforward. And I'd release the list publicly. And I would, just so people are able to see, for the sake of transparency, and I'd make that website very accessible for people to see and see what these individuals, who they are, what crimes they've committed, and then as they are turned over, mark them off. Sort of a countdown for ICE to leave Minnesota. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 36. Tonight, cloudy with a low around 17. For your Thursday, a 20% chance of rain and snow in the afternoon, otherwise partly sunny with a high near 38. And for Friday, partly sunny with a high near 25.
Joe Biden crawled out of his hole to bash Trump administration over tracking people down who are in this country illegally. I mean, this is the guy that dispatched federal agents all over this country to track down people who some didn't even walk in the Capitol because he claimed they were worse than the 9/11 terrorists. This is the mindset of the Democrats. So if you are in this country illegally and you are a convicted rapist, you should not be tracked down. That is, according to Democrats, according to Joe Biden, that is awful, that is horrible. But if you're some 86-year-old grandma that stood outside the Capitol taking pictures on January 6th, you deserve to be tracked down. Not some rapist from Ecuador. These people are, it's just undeniable. They are anti-American. Not just American as in the country, but Americans. I've made the point on numerous occasions, and just to provide additional evidence. Yesterday when Waltz is on CNN, and he's talking about how he met with Homan, and let's see if I can get I want to get the quote incorrect here. Well, all right, here it is. He was talking about meeting with Tom Homan, and he said that we need these folks out of Minnesota, talking about law enforcement, and we need justice for Renee Good and for Alex. Never once has Tim Waltz declared the need for justice for any of his own citizens murdered or raped by illegal aliens. Not once. And some of them were relatively high profile. August 2024, a Minnesota mom killed in a car accident after being struck by a drunk Ecuadorian who was in the country illegally. He had been arrested before, but it was Hennepin County. That is a sanctuary city, so he was let right back out. She would be alive if it were not for sanctuary city status. That is an individual that, had Minnesota not helped him evade ICE detention by being a sanctuary state, that Minnesota mom would be alive today. That is a policy that led to the direct killing of an innocent citizen of Minnesota. No press conferences for her. No moments of silence for Democrats. No Democrats calling for justice for her. 18-year-old Haley Helgeson, raised in Montevideo, Minnesota, killed last year along with her 19-year-old boyfriend, traveling to Wisconsin together, young couple in love, struck head-on by a drunk driver, traveling the wrong way on the highway. Guess what? Honduran, illegal. No calls for justice for Democrats, no press conferences for that couple. 2021, 50-year-old Mafalda Thaler, brutally murdered and beheaded by her boyfriend, who was in the country illegally because she wanted to end the relationship. Again, no, same thing, because she's an American. Americans get murdered left and right, raped left and right. What does that tell us? Not to mention for these left-wing activists that run around feigning that are just so concerned and, the Jimmy Kimmel's tearing up about the left of these individuals that get into physical altercations with law enforcement. But if you're some 12-year-old girl that gets raped and tortured for hours by illegals, that doesn't matter. That's not late-night talk show material. That's not on Governor Tim Walz's talking points. St. Paul landlord, 2021, brutally raped by an illegal from Mexico because she refused to let his girlfriend move in with her. These are citizens of his own state. Some of these people are residents of Mayor Fry's own city. Listen, if you want to, let me tell you, this is how you know that they're hand-wringing over the death of the two individuals of the last 3 weeks that interfered with law enforcement. How you know it's fake. Because if they really cared about human lives, then fine. You want to call for justice for those individuals. You want to have candlelight vigils for those individuals. But the fact that you only do it for those individuals that serve your political agenda tells you how depraved these people are. And that includes citizens. That includes people on social media, Facebook, that go on and on about how, I just can't believe what this country has become. Oh, but you were fine with it when it's just some 19-year-old nursing student out for a jog who got tortured and raped for hours by a couple of people in this country. That you were okay with. That America you're fine with. Where was your outrage? There's something wrong with you. And there's something wrong with our society. I'm not declaring that these individuals that I think oftentimes get coaxed into thinking it's no big deal to fight with law enforcement, and so they really don't understand the implications of what they're doing, that when they do lose their lives, I'm not saying that there should not be sympathy for those individuals. I'm just saying if you're going to have sympathy for them, how about the 6-year-old girl? How about the mother of 3? How about the 12-year-old playing in the playground? Individuals that weren't trying to interfere with law enforcement, that weren't weekly going to meetings trying to figure out how to disrupt the arrest of rapists. There's something screwy with you. If you don't feel compelled to speak out for those people, Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. It's a little dark, but I do have to chuckle when someone like Joe Biden plays the humanitarian card about what's going on in Minneapolis. This is a guy that, while president, droned a station wagon filled with kids in Afghanistan. And then no outrage about it. Now, obviously, Joe Biden's not the one who pushed the button, if you will, on that. But that was on his watch. That was after the fall of everything, when Biden made the brilliant move to pull us out and reward the Taliban with their own country. And there were criticisms that we were going to lose our ground game, that so much of the intelligence regarding that region of the world and that country in particular would now be lost because we were pulling out. And so then they used a drone to blow up a vehicle and then went out on national TV bragging, see, this proves that we are still capable of getting the bad guys. We don't need people on the ground. We're still able to go out and track down those terrorists. Well, it turned out that those terrorists, it was either a van or a station wagon with some food delivering volunteer and about 6 kids. Now, something like that, well, we're just doing what we got to do. It's unfortunate. Those things sometimes happen. Oh, okay. My favorite, though, Bill Clinton crawling out of his hole. Well, this is just beyond. Oh, do we want to revisit Waco? Are you freaking serious? For a guy that was not just president of the United States and ordered what happened at Waco to happen, but then was fully defensive of it, to have the audacity to even have your voice heard regarding what he says is, government overreach and the government, well, just going about this the wrong way. I mean, look at this. People are dying. Oh, okay. Yeah, you certainly have a lot of room to talk. How many kids were burned alive in Waco? Children. Or Elian Gonzalez under the Clinton administration, a little boy. You want to talk about separating families? Google the image. Elian Gonzalez, uncle, closet. The Clinton administration and Democrats were so adamant about sending a little boy, 5, 6 years old, back to the communist country of Cuba, where he belonged. See, he wasn't an American. Sent a SWAT team in to storm his family's house, in which his uncle, he was clinging to his uncle in a closet, hiding. And there's a photo that was taken of law enforcement with weapons of war finding you want to talk about an Anne Frank-style situation, Tim Waltz. That was Democrats that defended that. Yeah, these people are such lying trash. And listen, it's one thing if you want to be like, well, we've changed. But the very people, the exact same people, Bill Clinton being an example, that did that, they're just such liars. And the fact that they get away with it, if the media were at all honest, anytime they were like, well, former President Clinton is weighed in on this, they might do a little context. Elian Gonzalez, Waco. Just so people might have the context that there may be politics at play here, that for some of these people, this has nothing to do about their belief on immigration or how to enforce our immigration laws, because they're all over the map depending on what benefits them. But of course, we don't get that. You get that places like this. But the places where you're supposed to get the actual news, forget about it. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Well, we've got a couple of warmer days coming up next week. Not super warm, but warmer. And I mention all of that because if you are having issues with your HVAC, specifically your heating element, now is the time to call Foreman and try to aim for those warmer days to schedule your repairs. That way it's not too chilly for you or for them. Now, the Foreman team, they work on a variety of heating systems. They do residential and commercial properties, and they don't try to upsell you or use scare tactics on you. If you are looking for a repair, they're going to help you out as much as possible. But of course, if you are ready to upgrade, they can help you out with that too. If it is time to have the Foreman team out to your home, reach out to Russell and schedule that appointment today. You can find all of the contact information for Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
I'm not sure if you are a follower of tennis, but the Australian Open has been going on. I'm not a follower of tennis. I don't generally follow most sports, but I have noticed that there is this consistent occurrence at the post-match Q&As with the media in which a reporter will ask the tennis players how they feel representing the United States, given everything that's going on. And I grabbed just a couple of different stories here. One, Fox News. American tennis star Amanda Anisimova called out a reporter at the Australian Open for asking, quote, clickbait questions about representing the U.S. under the Trump administration, saying it's her right not to speak about political matters. Speaking to reporters after her fourth round victory over Wang Xingyu, Anisimova was asked about how she's handling the discourse that has surrounded her after a reporter asked her and several American tennis players about their thoughts on representing the United States in the context of Donald Trump. She said, I feel like the internet, it's tough. It comes with the job, which is something I've learned to get used to. She said, in my other press conference, the fact that I didn't want to answer a question that was obviously intended for just like a headline and clickbait, that was my right. It had nothing to do with my political views or anything like that. There's another story, Outkick, Lerner Tan, latest to shut down anti-Trump question on Australian Open. The 20-year-old from Irvine, California, advancing to the quarterfinals. Reporter began, it's been a big day for both of you. Iva Jovic, you really sort of feel the future for American tennis between you. It's also interesting, you're both second-hand generation immigrants to the U.S. Like, in the context of everything that's happening at the moment with Trump and ICE, what does your heritage mean to you, and how important are immigrants to America and American sports today? And this is a consistent line of questioning that comes up. And thus far, these athletes are taking what I think is probably the smartest approach. Now, selfishly, it'd be nice if, a question regarding immigration in particular from a second-generation immigrant would be like, well, my parents came here legally, and I support everyone else who does. But the smart thing is the route they're taking, and that is they're just not going to answer the questions. I failed to give you the response that the Lerner Tien had given when he was asked about being second-generation immigrant. He said, sorry, I don't really want to talk about that right now. So they're being smart. They're just, no, I'm not going to talk about it. The follow-up that Amanda Anisimova gave that I do think is somewhat erroneous is her claim that, or her belief, and I think it's genuine, that this is just clickbait. It is to get clicks, and it does get clicks. But I don't think that's what's going on here. Increasingly, what we are watching, people on the left that are essentially requiring individuals that are a representation of the United States to essentially pledge their loyalty to the opposition. And this is what authoritarians do. It's almost sort of like a McCarthy-era thing. Have you ever been with or associated with the Communist Party? But this is why, have you ever been with or associated with Trump supporters? Or are you really proud of America? And so this is... It's a test. It's like a litmus test that is given by the left in which they require people who are on the world stage, who have an audience, who are a representation of America, to go to put the world on notice. whether they are one of the good guys or one of the bad guys. And you see this in different forms. Whenever in Springfield some of the left-wing activists were trying to pass, I forget what it was called, but it was several years ago, and it would have banned girls and boys' bathrooms being separate in Springfield, and it done a lot of real left-wing extremist stuff. And what they would then do is you go around to businesses and we're like, oh, we're going to take out a big page ad. We're going to take a big ad out in the newspaper, and we're going to put allies of the LGBT community down. Can we put you down for one? The implication, of course, being if you don't, then you're one of the bad guys. This is the way that authoritarians behave. You see it all the time, any time. Like the late night talk shows, it isn't so much about forcing people to pledge their allegiance to the opposition, but more just reestablishing it. And it's so North Korean. You get what is supposed to be what's billed as these late night comedy talk shows, but all they are propaganda mouthpieces. And then here comes a celebrity to talk about a movie. All right, well, now let's talk about how awful Donald Trump is. Let's talk about how horrible Trump supporters are, these Nazis. And you have all of these platforms, be it what masquerades, though poorly at that, late-night talk show comedians or these news reporters that are just requiring people to declare their allegiance to their side or requiring homage be paid to their side. And it just drips with totalitarianism. Now, the upside is, during the first Trump administration, I don't know that these responses would have been as solid as they are, but increasingly we've seen these people saying, no, I'm not going to play that game. News in 60 seconds, I'm Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 1041. Hello, welcome. My name is Nick Reed, streaming live, KSGF.com. Also on YouTube. You can find us at Springfield's Talk 1041. Tom Homan had a meeting with Tim Waltz, and while there is at least the appearance of trying to de-escalate things, there's upcoming here, and not just in Missouri, but Springfield, left-wingers that are apparently attempting to create the sort of chaos and violence that has been occurring in Minneapolis here in Springfield. So you've got left-wingers escalating things here, and this is by way of a posting that is making a circulation, a business down on Pickwick named Culture Flock sharing it. In this neighborhood, we watch for ICE. There is going to be training sessions, rapid response training sessions, according to their posting, at the taxpayer-funded Schweitzer Brentwood Branch Library in Springfield, January 31st at 2:30 to 4 p.m. Now, we know, of course, what we've seen in terms of results of rapid response training. I think there are a lot of legitimate questions here. Are they also going to be training agents to carry out many intifadas, as Minnesota Watch has instructed their followers? Will they be encouraging people to interfere with law enforcement while carrying firearms? Will they be encouraging people to use their vehicles to run into law enforcement? These are now, some may say, well, that's of course not, but that's what is happening with these rapid response organizations. And when it does occur, they don't say, oh, no, hey, wait, no, we are totally 100% opposed to that. That's not who we are. They embrace it. They justify it. So you can't promote and defend certain activities from activists and followers who are trained by your organizations, but then say, how dare you claim that that's something that we would support or promote? You can't have it both ways. I think that there's some problems, and I would say that whomever has jurisdiction over the taxpayer libraries in Springfield, in Greene County, specifically the Schweitzer Brentwood Branch Library, is this really something that taxpayers should be paying for? Training sessions for people that are training to be insurrectionists, which that's, whether you care for the definition or not, that is what this is. You are trying to prevent the application and the carrying out of government duties, whether you agree with them or not. Again, these aren't made-up laws. These are laws that were passed by Congress. These are laws that are put in place. Democrats and Republicans have abided by them historically. There's not been any argument over this until recently. When you collectively have the coordination and training sessions on how it is to prevent government from executing its duties, that falls under the insurrection umbrella. And to have it be in a taxpayer-funded facility, a library, I definitely think, and given what the results that we've seen, people killed on both sides, when it comes to the issue of entanglement with law enforcement, and we've certainly seen, as of late, the hospitalization of members of law enforcement. One of these left-wing freaks bit half the finger off of one agent up in Minneapolis. So this is, I don't know that this is being put on by the business. And Culture Flock, if you're not familiar with it, I mean, I've been in there before. It's down there. Is it Pickwick and Cherry? And it's all LGBT stuff. These are activists that sell some apparel, which is fine. Private business, do what you want. I'm not sure if they're the ones coordinating this, but they have promoted it on social media to train people to be rapid response to ICE agents. Now, all that being said, it isn't relevant here like it is in Minneapolis because particularly when it comes to Greene County, you don't have a county that is releasing child molesters and wife beaters and rapists who are here illegally into the community. Whenever some violent criminal gets arrested for committing a violent crime and also happens to be in the country illegally, as opposed to Minneapolis, they respect the ICE detainers and wait for ICE to come get them. Because of that, ICE doesn't have to go combing through neighborhoods looking for these people. Now, I suspect that Culture Flock and those others that are going to attend the rapid response training probably have no clue that that's the situation. And they'll find themselves quite mystified. Well, why isn't this happening? You know, okay, we're ready to go, but we don't really see this happening here. Yeah, that's because we're not run by Democrats releasing these people into the streets. When you don't release them into the streets, ICE doesn't have to go into the streets to get them. And that isn't to say that there won't be some operations carried out in which perhaps they know that there is some sort of rapist that is here illegally that isn't currently detained, and they get a tip that they happen to be in this neighborhood or that, but that's not what's going on in Minneapolis. It's a much different scenario because of the people running Minneapolis and Minnesota as opposed to the people that are running and actually working with the federal agents when it comes to dealing with violent criminals who are in this country illegally. But as usual, I always wonder when you have a business that is openly supportive of laws not being enforced, if they would hold true to the belief that we should allow people to violate certain laws, if you had some sort of flash mob show up and rob the place, and then people demand that shoplifting laws not be enforced, would they be cool with that? Or are they the only ones who get to pick what laws are and aren't enforced? I mean, we know the answer. It's somewhat rhetorical. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 36. Tonight, cloudy with a low around 17. For your Thursday, a 20% chance of rain and snow in the afternoon, otherwise partly sunny with a high near 38. And for Friday, partly sunny skies with a high near 25.
If I were local law enforcement, I'd show up at this rapid response training at the library on what is the 31st? Is that Friday?
That's Saturday.
That's Saturday. I'd go to this. I mean, you're talking about safety issues, and you're talking about individuals. Recap: there's a business. It's an LGBTQ business culture flock on Pickwick that made a posting. In this neighborhood, we watch for ICE. Rapid response training, January 31st, 2020, 2:30 to 4, Schweitzer Brentwood Branch Library. And again, I think that there's some real questions that need to be asked and answered about these individuals, forcing taxpayers to pay for this training by utilizing a taxpayer-funded facility. But you're talking about individuals that are openly looking to train people on how to disrupt law enforcement from doing their job. That certainly seems like something law enforcement would go to. Can you imagine if you were a part of NAMBLA, North America Man Boys Love Association, and you're like, okay, everyone, we're sick and tired of child molesters getting arrested, so we're going to have meetings, not to lobby to change the law, not to tell people how to effectively write a letter to our member of Congress telling them we want to change the law. No, we are going to hold training sessions on how to protect these individuals when law enforcement is coming after them. We are going to hold. I mean, when you're talking about interfering with law enforcement, this is breaking the law. Now, of course, the rapid response training, they could say, oh, no, we're going to make sure that we completely abide by the law. We're not going to do what they're doing up in Minneapolis, and that is physically assaulting law enforcement. We're going to, in fact, the training is about making sure that you don't violate the law. Okay. But I think that's something law enforcement should be there to observe, to make sure that you don't have a meeting in which you are conspiring with others on how to violate the law in a taxpayer-funded facility. I don't think most of us would be able to do that. Yeah, heck yeah. Or if I was ICE, I'd show up for this. It would be. I these people, and I don't think really have a clue what is going on, to be honest with you. I think they're just people on the left tend to be relatively empty. They don't have meaningful purpose in their life, so they look for things to give them purpose. They want to feel important. They see what's going on in Minneapolis, and they're like, yeah, we want to do that. But again, I think they're going to be sorely disappointed because these things aren't happening here. And as I mentioned before, they're not happening here because, and this is what these left-wing activists here may not realize, what's going on in Minneapolis, that is a deliberate thing that is occurring. All of that was deliberately set up. They deliberately created an environment in which these individuals sought by ICE were released into neighborhoods so that ICE would have to go into the neighborhoods. That's not happening here. You don't have Greene County Sheriff Arnott refusing to cooperate and releasing drunk drivers and spousal abusers who are in the country illegally out into the Roundtree neighborhood so that ICE then has to go into the Roundtree neighborhood in order to get them. That's not what's occurring. And so, I'm sure it's probably more therapeutic for these people than anything. Get together, trash on law enforcement, and just talk about the virtues of protecting child molesters and human traffickers. Because equity. Because love means love. Stephen Colbert has sunk to his lowest January demo rating in the show's history. Should come as no surprise. Usually when a show like his is ramping up towards its ending, it gets higher viewership. Like Johnny Carson would be an example of this. You have more and more people tuning in. They're aware that it's coming to a close. They, want to see as many new fresh episodes as possible. But Colbert manages somehow to create the opposite effect where less and less people have any interest in watching his show. According to Nielsen data reported this week, Colbert's show is averaging roughly, this is just incredible to me, only 285,000 viewers. In the 25 to 54 demographic, that's considered the important demographic. That's in the whole country. That is insanely low. This is what's so crazy about people on the left who are like, we've got to save Colbert's show, and this is going away because Trump is a fascist. Like, you honestly believe on a major network in a time slot like that for late night talk show, 285,000 people in the main demographic across this entire country justifies continuing to pay him multi-million dollars and all the staffing and everything? Are you out of your mind? It is insanity. These left-wing, all of these left-wingers who claim that it's so important for Stephen Colbert to say on the air they ought to collectively get together, and I'm talking the rich celebrities, find out what the financial deficit is, how much it is costing, how much corporate welfare is involved to keep Stephen Colbert on air. Because at 285,000 people nationwide, they ain't making money in advertising to pay the bills. Nowhere close to it. So all of these rich celebrities that have more money than they know what to do with, they should offer to make up that deficit to keep them on air. Now, of course, they're not going to do that, 'cause, they don't care that much. Well, I mean, other people should pay to keep them on air. That puts the show on track for the worst January performance ever in the category that advertisers care about. With just months left before the curtain call for good, the rating trajectory suggests viewers have been checking out long before CBS formally pulled the plug, which, of course, is why they pulled the plug. And it's clear the only reason that Stephen Colbert was kept on the air as long as he was because he was a leftist. For all of the victimhood, which is traditional on the left, and, Stephen Colbert's being canceled, this is Trump's America. This is what it means to be a lefty in America today. If he weren't an individual that has transitioned that show from an entertainment show to strict political propaganda, he would have been off the air years ago. Years ago. Because he would have been of no value. He is of no financial value, but for the left-rich elite that run Hollywood, he provides a service, and that is, propaganda. It just got too expensive. You watch these people, and over the last week or so, the crying, the screaming F-ice. These are supposed to be comedy shows. I don't know that there's ever been any sort of business, which that's what these shows are, that have claimed to be one thing, but everyone realizes in reality there's something totally different, and they've been able to get away with it as long as they have. The idea that these are supposed to be entertainment shows, it really is, I referenced North Korea earlier, like living in some sort of totalitarian regime in which the masses are told, oh no, this is just for your entertainment, sit down and enjoy, and then they just feed propaganda at you. But you dare not criticize it. You dare not say, wait a minute, this actually isn't funny, because if you do, you're the enemy. There's another article about some other artist that has refused or they're withdrawing a performance from the Kennedy Center of Arts. You know, you see a lot of these artists doing it. And who is this guy? I don't even know who this guy is. Let's see. There was one in particular, Roma Daravi. Oh, no, wait, that's not it. Grammy Oscar-nominated composer Phil Glass revealed he's canceling the world premiere of his upcoming Symphony 15 Lincoln at the center, citing a conflict of political values. Remember when artists used to claim that art transcended politics? These are the same people, I can guarantee you, in a minute he would go over to Beijing and perform where they have concentration camps and slavery. And he would allow them to edit any of his material in exchange for that performance. And I can all but guarantee that because virtually all of Hollywood does that. They will allow the communist Chinese government to alter content of film, which has happened on numerous occasions, all so they can have a marketplace in a country that has slavery and concentration camps. But they're too filled with moral integrity to perform at the center that Trump is involved in. That's just a step too far for them. These people are not artists. If you refuse to share your art with the world because somebody you don't like politically is you're not really an artist. I got a news flash for you. You're a political activist. And you diminish the value of your art. So take that. I want a great homeloan.com for all of your home loan needs, refinancing. Maybe it is reverse mortgage, or maybe you think that the interest rates are too high. You got a 3-point-something%, or maybe just 3% interest rate because you locked it in, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years ago, and you're like, I'd have to be insane. Or maybe you're renting and you're ready to buy, but you're thinking to yourself, well, I don't want to pay that sort of interest rate. You're paying an interest rate now on someone else's mortgage if you're renting, even if it's an apartment. And interest rates, you can always adjust. So if you go in now and the interest rate's a little higher than you're comfortable with, you're still putting equity into a home that you own. And then when interest rates go down, you can refinance. Don't let that be your obstacle. Reach out to the characters. And like Alex said last week or the week before, look, even if you're not ready now, they can go ahead and get all the paperwork filled out so that once you are ready, the day that you're ready, you can do it. Instead of having to spend the days gathering the info, filling out the paperwork, they can go ahead and pull the trigger for you. Their contact info, they're great folks, is at iwantagreathomeloan.com. Traffic update, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 36. Tonight, cloudy with a low around 17. For your Thursday, a 20% chance of rain and snow in the afternoon, otherwise partly sunny with a high near 38. And for Friday, partly sunny skies with a high near 25.
I absolutely love this story. So there's a gal by the name of Kelly Newman. She's a fundraising co-chair for a number of Democratic candidates. This is specifically in, is this Minnesota or Michigan? One of the two. Let me pull up here the listing of people that she has worked with and been fundraisers for. Okay, so one of them, Whitmer. So this is Michigan. She has close ties to the Democrat Party in Michigan, including the state's current Governor Whitmer. She hosted a fundraiser for her in December. She's a fundraiser, I think, for the current gubernatorial candidate. She's very well known. She's high profile Democrat fundraiser. She's very well connected. And apparently on Veterans Day last year, she posted a photo of her grandfather who fought in World War II and just talked to, how much she admired him and he was truly her best friend and so forth. Well, the problem with her posting and the fact that he was a veteran from World War II is he was on the other side.
Ooh.
He was literally a Nazi. She even posted a photo of him in uniform. And this is somehow this is recirculating, or I don't know if it was just recently caught. And she fully acknowledges, oh, yeah, he was a Nazi, but he was a really great guy. He even escaped. He was never held accountable for any of his crimes. He escaped to Brazil, like a lot of other Nazis did. There were a couple of different countries, of course, they went to, one of them being Brazil, in order to evade any sort of capture or repercussion when Germany fell. And and it sounds like part of the excuse is, well, he was a low-level Nazi.
Oh, okay.
I know. And of course, you get people on the left that will defend her. Well, it was her grandfather. And so let me see. I understand the mindset of people on the left. If you have a grandfather that is a Trump supporter, you are supposed to disown him. But if you have a grandfather that was an actual Nazi, now that's different, see, because, it was a long time ago, and what are you gonna do? And he's a nice guy. Other than the Nazi thing, this is how sick and twisted people are on the left. Sick and twisted. No, my grandpa was a Nazi. He was awesome. Hey, look. Hey, normal people. You grow up and you get a grandfather, and hey, he was young and he didn't have any choice, right? We hear that all the time, and like in the left in a situation like this, well, he didn't have any choice. You hear this whenever they talk about George Soros, and then was he a Nazi? Well, he was young, and well, he wasn't directly a Nazi, but you got to understand he was young. He didn't have any choice. They didn't have any choice. Well, then why if actual Nazis, according to the left, whenever they rationalize situations like this, as you can't blame Nazis for being Nazis. Being an actual Nazi is excusable, but being a Trump supporter who you label a Nazi isn't. Literally the left, in their minds, being called a Nazi is supposed to be worse than actually being a Nazi. Because actually being a Nazi, you couldn't really help it necessarily. But this is what happens when you try to figure out the minds of these people. It's like when Zelensky was running around with that Nazi soldier. It took him to Canada and Canadian Parliament. I all stood up and applauded. And like, wait, aren't you are the same people that are using the term Nazi to completely disparage and discredit your political opponents. But then when it comes to actual Nazis, we find that they defend themselves. Or they defend those Nazis. Especially if you point out, like Hitler, he was a socialist, and that was kind of his thing. Well, There was the pro-life march that took place. Now, if you notice, whether you want to call it a march or a protest, the behavior of pro-life people that are generally conservative, a little bit different than what we see from protesters on the left. Just slightly. It gives you a cultural clue in terms of some of the differences. There was a on-the-ground reporter, if you will, and she was interviewing a number of people, and she came across a gal who traveled from Ohio to represent a group called New Wave Feminists. And so why did she go all the way? This is a left-wing feminist. She's a person of color, by the way. Goes all the way to Ohio to this march. Now, it wasn't to protest the march. It was to protest in the march for life. And here she's explaining why it is that true feminism supports the unborn.
Being a pro-life feminist means that you support equality, nonviolence, and non-discrimination for women and femme-presenting people, and that includes no violence, no discrimination, and equality for people in the womb.
Do you feel welcomed here as a outspoken feminist when maybe not everybody is one?
If I'm honest, I don't feel welcome in some pro-life spaces. A lot of people feel that feminism is intricately tied to abortion, and historically that hasn't been the case. Feminism is a social construct, meaning that the core tenets of it we can examine through a critical lens to see what applies to feminism today and in the society that we're in and what does not. And in my opinion, if you value equality, nonviolence, and non-discrimination for women and femme-presenting people, you can't support abortion.
Yeah. What about feminists who say you cannot be one of us if you are pro-life?
I would just simply disagree with them, and I would say that they're committing lateral violence against people who happen to be helpless, people who happen to be innocent, people who have limited abilities, people who only are relying on the habitat in which they're supposed to be, which is their mother's womb. They're precious, they're beautiful, just like every human being. And if you value equality, nonviolence, and non-discrimination, you have to extend that to people in the womb.
Some people might try and claim, well, this was somebody just pretending to be a left-winger. I don't know. She sounded pretty, I mean, she really sounded like all of the presenting this and she screams really, really, really deep into the leftism. What makes her an anomaly is, for whatever reason, her brain, as dysfunctional as one might think it is because of all the claptrap of the verbiage, the usage, and just all of the construct stuff, there's part of her brain that recognizes if an honest person actually does believe these things that we say we believe in, you have to be pro-life. If a person, I'm a feminist, I'm a left-winger, and hey, we say we believe in equality and we believe in protecting those that can't protect themselves, and we believe in non-discrimination, so you have to be pro-life. You can't believe in those things and then say, oh, except for babies, and, kill them. Even if you want to kill one because it's going to be mentally challenged, or because it's not going to be blonde hair, blue eyes, my version of the perfect race, so I should be able to just kill my own baby. And she's like, that is the opposite of what feminists stand for. Now, her mistake is believing that's the opposite of what feminists stand for. She is correct in noting that being pro-life is consistent with what feminists claim that they, and when I say feminists, I'm talking about the left-wing extremist. But what you and I recognize is that, generally speaking, people on the left who espouse these virtues they claim they believe in, they don't actually believe in them. Claim they believe in free speech. They don't believe in free speech. They believe in their speech. Claim that they believe in safe spaces. Well, not for people that are members of organizations that they disagree with. They claim that they believe in equity and equality. They don't. They believe in raising up certain categories of people. They claim they're against the Second Amendment. Well, until one of their supporters shows up with a firearm and struggles with law enforcement during ICE operations. They never truly believe in the thing that they say they believe in. They only claim it when it serves their personal desires. And this individual, I'm not sure that has ever been articulated to her, if it's something that she's thought about. So when it comes to political feminism, as she is describing it, this means one of two things. Either she isn't one, or the rest of them aren't. Because she's right. If feminists truly do believe in those virtues, they have no other choice but to be pro-life. And good for her. As a thinking individual, at least when it comes to consistency in breaking away from the mind-numbing, repetitive nature of these chants that come out of the left that just require complete obedience and actually thinking for herself when it comes to the connection between what feminists say that they are and what abortion is. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. The Pyramid Roofing Company. Winter is in full swing, and just here in a couple of days, maybe it's even happening right now, the snow will start to melt off, which is when roofing issues may really start to pop up for you. Now, if you notice leaks, yellowing on your ceiling, or gutter issues, reach out to Josh. The Pyramid team, they work year-round, including the winter months, and they offer free roof inspections. They do residential and commercial work, and they also offer a discount for our military and first responders on new roof installs. So if you notice roofing issues over the next couple of days as that snow melts off, schedule that free roof inspection with Josh. You can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
I do want to, just so many things today. But with the pro-life march is occurring, I want to share this from the Federalist. Lauren Hirschberger wrote a piece, and it has to do with the, abortion pill. And increasingly, this is when it comes to abortion, it's the only part that of our society that the left and Democrats don't want regulations. And they keep peddling this idea that, oh, yeah, abortion pill, you can just send those in the mail. Anyone can take them. It's perfectly safe. That's a lie. 1 out of 10. 1 out of 10. Women who take one of these pills ends up with serious medical complications, sometimes death. And Democrats are out there convincing them they're perfectly safe. They are willing to sacrifice 1 in 10 women's lives. In the piece, she writes, when the phone rings at 2 a.m., the voice on the other end is rarely calm. As a former 911 dispatcher, I spent years trained to be the steady anchor in someone's darkest hour, but nothing in my emergency service career prepared me for the harrowing calls I field now on an abortion pill helpline. I speak every day with women and girls in moments of fear, pain, and confusion, often in the middle of the night when no one else is willing to answer the phone. Over the past year, I've noticed a troubling pattern that should concern anyone who cares about women's health, parental responsibility, and basic medical ethics. The number of calls from women related to chemical abortions is increasing, as is the confusion. Women ask whether the amount of blood they're losing is normal. They aren't sure if they took the pills correctly or at the right time or in the right dose. Many don't know how many weeks pregnant they even are. They were told this would be simple, private, and empowering. In reality, it's often chaotic and isolating. One call still haunts me. Jenny was 17 years old when she told the boy she'd known since she was 12 that she was pregnant. His response was blunt: get an abortion. When she told him she couldn't afford the pills, he suggested she drink rubbing alcohol. When she refused, he blocked her number. Jenny turned to her mother. Still a minor and financially dependent, she hoped for protection or guidance. Instead, she was told they couldn't afford a baby. Her mother ordered abortion drugs online. By the time the drugs arrived, Jenny was 16 weeks pregnant, 4 months pregnant, and well past when it's considered, quote, safe to take abortion drugs. She delivered a baby far more developed than she was told to expect. 2 months later, Jenny called our helpline. She was still grappling with trauma, grief, and the realization this was never truly her choice. Access did not give her autonomy, it gave her scars. Stories like Jenny's are becoming more common as abortion activists, protected by so-called shield laws in blue states, mail high-risk abortion drugs across state lines with virtually no oversight. During the pandemic, the FDA's long-standing safety protocols, or risk evaluation and mitigation strategies, were rolled back, allowing the distribution of mifepristone without essential medical screenings. In 2023, abortion drugs accounted for 63% of all abortions. These drugs don't just reach women who are actively seeking them. They end up in the hands of minors, coercive parents, and abusive partners. Angry boyfriends or husbands who pressure, manipulate, or even administer them without consent of the mother. Last month, in the early mornings of the hour, I received a call from a teenage boy who was in the middle of forcing abortion drugs into his girl's vagina. Quote, is 2 enough, he asked? Or do I need to put another one in? When I asked where he got the drugs, he said, "I don't know, one of the top 2 search results." He couldn't find the website again. There were no clear instructions, no medical supervision, no accountability. This is what happens when policy turns every home into a makeshift abortion center and leaves women and girls to deal with the fallout alone. Major online distributors of abortion pills advertise medical support hotlines. But the details matter. The hours are limited. If something goes wrong late at night, when many of these crises occur, there's no one to help. These same organizations promote themselves in glossy media articles celebrating abortion at home as progress. Yet even their own stories reveal women receiving unmarked drugs in brown paper bags without any instructions. The industry either vastly overestimates the medical knowledge of its audience or knowingly exploits it. Either way, women are paying the price. Some callers are actively discouraged from seeking emergency care because of cost or inconvenience. Others are told to lie, to say they're having a miscarriage rather than admit that they took the drugs. This isn't health care, it's damage control. Women in rural and impoverished communities are especially vulnerable. Many lack reliable internet, transportation, or nearby emergency rooms. As an emergency responder myself, I know that a phone assessment is only as good as the caller's ability to describe her symptoms, often while bleeding, panicked, and alone. Even Americans who support legal abortion recognize the danger here. A majority oppose mailing abortion drugs without an in-person doctor visit because they understand this is not safe. We are told these drugs are compassionate and necessary. From where I sit, answering the phones in the dark, they look like a growing public health crisis, one that sacrifices women like Jenny and call it progress. The calls abortion activists celebrate as victories are the same calls that follow me home at night. The question we should be asking is simple: how many women and their babies are an acceptable casualty? This is an issue that's been discussed in Congress, and in fact, one of the viral videos that we played of Josh Hawley asking a doctor if men can have babies, and she wouldn't answer the question, that was actually about this particular issue, because it is massively dangerous. Yet Democrats are choosing abortion over women. And this, one of the most dishonest, and I'll say evil, propaganda narratives is that what they want is for the safety and health of the mother. They are sacrificing the safety and health of the mother. Here in Missouri, the abortion amendment gave immunity to anyone who performed an abortion and botched it, even up to killing the mother. They're given a get-out-of-jail-free card. And Democrats continue to downplay and pretend as if you don't have these horrific situations that are occurring because these oftentimes very young and scared women are lied to and lulled into believing that this is just as easy as taking an aspirin. It is a culture of death. Glenn Beck's coming up next. I'm Nick Reed.